He stood at the altar, looked me in the eye, and said, "You lied to me." Then he turned around and walked out. Just like that. In front of my parents, friends, everyone. I didn't even get the chance to explain. My name is Amber. I'm 29 years old. I had waited my whole life for this day. The dress, the music, the man I loved, everything was perfect. At least I thought it was. His name is Jason. We met 2 years ago. He was smart, kind, and always smiling. I told him little things about my life, but I never told him the big thing. The money thing. The $1 million I owed to a bank from a failed business. It was a mess I was still cleaning up. I wasn't hiding it forever, I just wasn't ready. He found out the morning of the wedding. I think someone told him. Maybe my cousin, or maybe he saw one of the letters on my kitchen counter. I'll never know for sure. All I remember is him pulling me aside just before we were about to walk into the ceremony. "You should have told me," he said. "I was going to," I whispered. "Just not today." His eyes were cold. "You should have told me before I spent a dime on this wedding." I grabbed his hand. "Please, Jason. I didn't mean to hurt you." But he was already backing away. And then, in front of everyone, he left. People gasped. My mom cried. I stood there frozen in my white dress, the veil still pinned to my hair. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just felt empty. I kept thinking, if I had just told him earlier, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But deep down, I also wondered if he truly loved me, would he have stayed? After Jason walked out, the room was silent. I didn't even move. It felt like time had stopped. Then people started whispering. Someone touched my shoulder and asked if I was okay. I just nodded. But I wasn't okay. I went into the dressing room and locked the door. I sat on the floor in my wedding dress and stared at the wall. That's when the texts started coming in. Friends, cousins, even people I barely knew. Some were kind. Some were nosy. A few were cruel. Why didn't you tell him? I would have left too. He deserved to know. The worst part? I agreed with them. I should have told him. But I was scared. Scared of losing him. Scared of being judged. My business failed 2 years ago. I had taken a big loan to try and save it. It didn't work. Then came the penalties. The interest. It all added up. Now I owed the bank $1 million. I'd been meeting with lawyers, trying to fix it. But I was still deep in debt. What I didn't know until that night was this. Jason already heard rumors. A friend of his saw me at a bank office 2 weeks earlier. Another friend Googled my name and found an article from when I was sued by one of my old business partners. So people knew. People whispered. And none of them told me. Not even Jason. He waited until our wedding day. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment. My wedding dress was still on the floor. My phone buzzed, another message from Jason. You didn't trust me. That's what hurts the most. I didn't know what to say. I didn't reply. Later that week, I learned something else. Jason had told his family about what happened, but he didn't tell them everything. He said I hid my past and was dishonest from the start. That wasn't true. I told him so many things about myself, my job, my family, my goals. I just didn't tell him the one thing I was most ashamed of. Now, I had lost my husband, my reputation, and maybe some friends too. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone thought I deserved it. But none of them knew how hard I tried to fix my life, and none of them stayed to hear my side. I paid my debt without him. The days after the wedding were quiet. Too quiet. My apartment felt colder. My phone barely rang anymore. The people who used to check on me disappeared. Some of them were probably embarrassed. Some just didn't know what to say. But most, I think, simply didn't care. I stayed inside a lot. I stopped checking social media. There were pictures from the wedding day, people dressed up, smiling, with captions like "beautiful day," even though it ended badly. I felt like a story everyone watched, judged, and moved on from. But for me, it wasn't a story. It was my life. One afternoon, about 2 weeks later, I got an email from Jason's sister, Claire. She was always kind to me. Amber, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. I know my brother was hurt, but I also know you're not a bad person. I hope you're okay. You don't owe me an answer, I just wanted to say that. I cried after reading that. Not because it changed anything, but because it reminded me that someone still saw me as human. After that, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I should have told Jason the truth from the beginning. But hiding in my apartment wasn't helping. The debt was still there. My life was still mine to fix, so I made a list of things to do. 1. Talk to my lawyer again. 2. Look for a second job. 3. Sell anything I didn't need. 4. Call the bank and ask to restructure the loan. 5. Start fresh. That list became my focus. Every day, I crossed off something. I got a job as a nighttime receptionist at a hotel. It wasn't fun, but it paid. I also started helping a small local bakery with their books and social media. They didn't have much money to pay me, but they gave me food and a quiet place to work. I even began walking dogs in the neighborhood for extra cash. I worked 7 days a week. I stopped shopping. I cooked cheap meals. I sold clothes, furniture, even my old TV. My apartment got emptier, but my bank account got fuller. I wasn't rich. I wasn't debt-free. But I was moving forward, and slowly, my shame started to go away. One night, I sat down and wrote Jason a letter. Not to win him back, not to argue, but to tell the truth. I should have told you everything. I know that now. I was scared. Not of you, but of what losing you would feel like. But I did love you, and that was real. I hope someday, you can remember the good parts too. I'm fixing things now. For myself. I didn't send the letter. I just needed to write it. To release it. About 6 months after the wedding, I got a call from the bank. The manager I'd been working with said they were willing to reduce the interest if I kept up my payments for a full year. It wasn't a miracle, but it helped a lot. That night, I treated myself to a small pizza and a soda. I sat on the floor, put on a funny movie, and laughed alone for the first time in months. I was healing. A year passed. Then another. I moved to a smaller, cheaper place closer to the bakery. I became their full-time manager. I started sleeping more, smiling more, living more. One day, I walked past a couple taking wedding photos outside a church. The bride looked nervous. The groom kissed her forehead. I didn't feel bitter. I actually smiled. I remembered how I once stood in that white dress, hoping for forever, and how that day shattered. But I also remembered what came after, the part no one clapped for. But the part that mattered most, the part where I stood back up. 3 years after that wedding, I made my final payment. My lawyer called me that morning and said, "Amber, it's done. You're debt-free." I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you." I thanked myself. For surviving. For trying. For working when no one saw. For not letting one mistake define my whole life. That night, I went to a small rooftop cafe by myself. I ordered a slice of chocolate cake and a coffee. I looked out over the city lights and felt light. A man sat down a few tables away. He looked familiar. After a second, I realized it was Jason. He saw me too. We both froze. Then he smiled. A soft, surprised smile. He walked over. "Hi, Amber." I smiled back. "Hi, Jason." We talked for a few minutes. It wasn't weird. Just two people catching up. He told me he was engaged. She was a teacher. They met through friends. I told him about the bakery and how I paid off the debt. He looked proud. "I always knew you were tough," he said. When we said goodbye, there was no drama. No pain. Just peace. I walked home that night alone, but not lonely. People think love stories are about happy endings with someone else, But sometimes, the best love story is the one you write with yourself. And that's what I found in the end, a quiet, strong kind of love, one that never walks out.